Welcome, foolish mortals, to the Haunted Mansion.
On this week's episode, we're going to be reviewing Shaqtoberfest in Long Beach, California. You're listening to episode 143 of the Theme Park Duo podcast.
Prepare yourselves for an unforgettable encounter.
Hi, and welcome to the Theme Park Duo podcast. Grab your park map, churro, and hop in line with us as we take you on a coast-to-coast adventure through the world of theme parks, haunts, conventions, and more. Now, here's your hosts, Nikki and Gabriel.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another fantastic episode of the Theme Park Duo podcast. I'm your host, Gabe, and as you noticed, Nikki is absent again. I don't know where she went. She said she was going out for milk and she never came back. I don't know what's going on, but I digress with the family drama. And we have a fun episode lined up for you today. We're going to be talking Shaqtoberfest, the very random event that is being thrown at the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. Now, when this event took place and when the media event took place, me and Nikki happened to be all the way in Hawaii, which you're going to be learning about in a different episode and how we got there and why we were there and things of that nature. But because we were invited out to go partake in Shaqtoberfest, we wanted to make sure that everybody who follows our socials got that experience, and people who listen to this podcast got that experience to get to hear about Shaqtoberfest. So we sent our very good friend Josh Taylor from Modern Mouse to go experience Shaqtoberfest, and we have him here today. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Hey, buddy, how's it going?
Very good. I'm very pumped to hear about Shaqtoberfest because I feel like everybody collectively in the themed entertainment realm was like, huh? As soon as it got announced.
Yeah, if people even knew about it, it felt like a lot of people, this was under a ton of people's radars because there was just not a lot of advertising about it unless you kind of run in the same circles that we do, where we just happen to be at everything all the time.
There was no TV commercials. There was nothing on the radio. It was really just like a blitz on social media is what I noticed. I don't know if that's because the algorithm or whatever the heck is monitoring whatever AI robots are monitoring what I look at, but I was getting so many ads for Shaqtoberfest, and it's Shaq saying, hey, Instagram, hey, Twitter, hey, TikTok, and then like talking about Shaqtoberfest. And it was, I couldn't escape it. So I find that really interesting that, you know, it flew under the radar.
It did kind of fly under the radar for a lot of people, and it's interesting to state that because the amount of people that were there on media night, from what I heard, was a busier night than most nights, and I would still consider it to be a pretty laid back evening.
Did you so it was a relatively calm evening in comparison to what you would consider your typical night out for a Halloween event?
Yeah, I would say the busiest ones are typically not Scary Farm or Halloween Horror Nights.
Yeah, that one gets gnarly, dude. That's gnarly.
Yeah,
crap
Halloween
there.
Horror Nights. Yeah, I mean, Halloween Horror Nights, you can have lines, you know, over an hour for a lot of the mazes. Here, there were no lines practically for anything. If there was a line, it might have been maximum 5 minutes long.
That's not so bad.
This was media night where it was packed with a ton of people. So yeah. I'm surprised. And from what I'm hearing from other people going on different nights, even leading up towards Halloween, it's still pretty relaxed.
Which is nice. That's really, really nice. Now, before we jump into Shaqtoberfest and talking about all the ridiculousness that is Shaquille O'Neal during Halloween, let's talk a little bit about you now. Josh, I am a big fan of your content that you've been posting on TikTok. A lot of informational and historical pieces that I just find fascinating. So I just want to tell you that, like, I love your content so much.
Thanks. It's interesting because TikTok is my biggest account. but it was the one I've been on the least amount of time. It's also the one that like I kind of give the least amount of time. Not to say that like I don't put effort into the things I post there, but I spend so much time, especially doing like videos for YouTube that are 20 minutes long, where I talk about, you know, a topic at length. For me to be able to just like spout out some quick facts in 30 seconds about, you know, a cartoon show on TikTok, it's amazing that that grew as quickly as it did. I didn't think it would.
Well, the thing is that you have the perfect hook because you just state a fact that is undeniably interesting, and then before you know it, you're into the meat and potatoes of your quick video that you're doing, and you're getting the analytics you need. Like, you get people in there really easily.
It's also easier to watch like a 30-second video than a 20-minute video, right? Like there's a time commitment involved. So even if you're not like super interested, even if you're just like mildly interested, you'll be like, oh, I'll stick around for a couple more seconds. So I get it.
I stick around for your face, Josh. I'm just that attracted to you. That's just really what it comes down to.
Wow, this theme park trio pretty soon.
Exactly. Where's the pineapple that I could turn upside down?
Yikes. Yikes. Didn't know it was this kind of show.
Just joking, everyone. Calm down. Don't get your undies in a bunch, everybody. Moving on. We always know the show's about tangents. We don't know what the tangents are about, but they're tangents. But yeah, so your content's fantastic. I'm glad that you were able to make it out for us and cover the event. So thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to go enjoy Shaqtoberfest and post all about it on our socials.
Yeah, it was real rough.
Super rough. Really difficult job there, right?
Yeah.
I do have to say though, like, some events are very difficult. Like it isn't all, you know, fairy dust and fun. Sometimes we are running around like chickens with no heads trying to cover stuff for different events. Like, I feel like that way for Horror Nights and Scary Farm, and even Fright Fest to an extent. A lot of other events, smaller ones, are much easier to deal with, like Shaqtoberfest. But the bigger events, man, it's working media for sure.
Yeah, I also want to say that, and not to, you know, yuck anyone's yum or anything, but
yuck my yum, baby. Yuck my yum.
There are some like not great events that I've been to that I've had to, like, you know, not necessarily promote, but definitely review. And
you have to be careful.
3 or 4 hours there, and it's like, I don't really want to be here.
I don't think I've been to an event where I've felt that way. I've been to events where I know that it's not great, but there are redeeming factors. Sure. But I've never been in an event where I'm just like, I want to go home. I do not want to be here. I don't want to cover this. I don't want to be involved.
Yeah, here's a quick tangent for you. So I was asked to go when I lived in Denver for a period of time a few years ago. I was asked to go to the local theme park there, Elitch Gardens, which is a beautiful park, but they opened up a brand new ride, or they were planning to open it for the new season. So the season there for opening of their theme park opens somewhere like mid-April, maybe later April. And they wanted to get enough press coverage for it. So they invited people out in early April, and they decided to do it like at a testing point long before the park would normally be open, but I don't know why, because it wasn't open yet. But they asked me to be there at 6:30 in the morning. And I don't know if you've ever been to Denver in early April or, you know, late March or whatever. It's still coming out of winter.
I can make a very educated guess and say that you were freezing cold.
Yeah, you could see your breath in front of your face, right? And they invited us out to this opening of a new ride that was like a kind of like, you know, the traditional dark ride. And because I had to stick around for a while and interview some people and get some video for that thing, which was the opening of like the first ever Meow Wolf dark ride, which was kind of cool. And the ride was cool, but I rode it 3 or 4 times, interviewed a couple of people, all from like 6:30 to 7:30. It's probably 25 to 30 degrees outside. Everybody that I'm talking to is huddled under, a little lamp, like a little
heater
fire
lamp?
lamp. Yeah, like a little heater lamp. And people are just like downing coffee just for the hope that it keeps them warm. So there's moments like that.
So
where,
everyone's shaking.
yeah, and I'm trying to
uncontrollably shaking from the
I'm
caffeine.
trying to get some clean audio for everybody, and everybody's jaws are like shaking. But it isn't like the situation wasn't a bad attraction. It was just a bad situation. So there have been moments like that.
Oh, I mean, I can share a bad attraction that we had to review. We went out and reviewed that submarine attraction that was at SeaWorld San Diego. And that's closed now. It closed not long after it opened. That thing was just bad.
Well,
just bad.
That's why it's not around anymore, right?
True. It's all demolished and it no longer exists. It has been wiped from the face of the earth.
Perfect.
Other than all the YouTube videos all
Sure.
about it. But let's waste no more time. Let's jump into Shaqtoberfest and talk about the details. We'll talk about ticket prices. We'll talk about the attractions, kind of the overall aspect of Shaqtoberfest, so everybody kind of gets a good sense of what the event is. Now, one thing I do want to make very, very clear, and it seems like some people are still very confused, that Shaqtoberfest has absolutely nothing to do with Dark Harbor. They are two completely separate events, two very different events. They just happen to have shared the same spot. So I think some people don't know that Dark Harbor is gone, and Shaqtoberfest has taken its place next to the Queen Mary. Some people think that it's a version of Dark Harbor, if you will, which I find very confusing.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. If you understand the politics of Long Beach and what's gone on with that ship with the Queen Mary in the last few years, you probably have a good idea of why Dark Harbor is not returning, which is unfortunate. I think everybody in the haunt community in Los Angeles loved Dark Harbor to some extent. It was my favorite haunt out of everything.
Wow, really? That was your number one?
Yeah, it was. I felt like it was kind of like the underdog event, and I'm always the person that roots for the scrappy underdog, the like punk rock DIY kind of kid. For us, it was definitely the number two. Obviously number one for us is Scary Farm. Sure,
but we always liked Dark Harbor because it felt closest to what a Scary Farm felt like, except a lot more booze, which we didn't hate. We enjoyed finding the secret bars, although it just seemed like they wanted to run a themed bar rather than a haunt at times. We did really enjoy finding the secret bars, having a drink. The atmosphere was fun, the sliders were great, the mazes were really fun. It was just a really good and strong event. So we were incredibly bummed when we found out that Dark Harbor was pretty much no more.
Yeah, and I was kind of the same way, and I had to go into this one with no expectations. I could not compare it to Dark Harbor. You would unfairly be comparing it to Dark Harbor.
And I think you are absolutely correct in your assessment and how you're approaching it, because it's just not fair. They are two distinctly different events targeting different people. Completely different demographic. So if you were to try to compare them, you obviously are going to like Dark Harbor more if you're the type of person that wants your drinks and kind of more of a party atmosphere, because Shaqtoberfest just, to me, doesn't exude that energy in the slightest.
It does have some elements of Dark Harbor, and we'll, I think, get to that in time, but yeah, for the most part, this is a much more all ages event versus the Dark Harbor felt more teen and up.
At times, Dark Harbor felt 18 and up, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like they at times really brushed with the, R rating movie kind of standard of probably shouldn't be here if you're under 18.
Sure.
At times. So I found that very interesting. But, that's the case with Shaqtoberfest. So I just wanted to make all that information very, very clear. They are not the same thing. Where I do want to compare them, and just from a logistics standpoint that I'm fascinated in, when Queen Mary had Dark Harbor there, obviously they had mazes on the ship. I think they had a 3D show on the ship, and then there was mazes off the ship in kind of the area in front. Now, obviously, we can't go on the ship again because of the situation with it, and we know that Shaqtoberfest doesn't go on board. But does Shaqtoberfest pretty much encompass the same plot of land that Dark Harbor did?
Yeah, it encompasses the same like parking lot space the Dark Harbor did.
So it's not smaller, and it's also not bigger. It's the exact same spot.
Yeah, the only trouble is that you're not going onto the ship. There are even spaces that do go really close to the ship, which I thought was nice. You know, you're going to get as close as you could get. I hope that one day it does open up, because I think that this event could work going on to the ship. And, you know, maybe that's a plan in their near future if that's a possibility. But currently, because the ship, you know, can't have anybody on it really, or not a lot of people, because it's sort of sinking, that's just not a possibility.
Sort of sinking. It is sinking.
Well, yes.
It is sinking. Small tangent. What's the over-under if the Queen Mary does open up again, that they would want Dark Harbor back rather than have a different event?
I wouldn't know, because I don't know if Dark Harbor or like any of the other events that they ran were tied to the previous owners.
Interesting.
I think that, you know, if the city of Long Beach, which is the owner of the ship, I guess the other people were just renting it from the city, but whoever comes in to run it, run the operations, I don't know if they would want to go back to that or not. I do feel like Shaqtoberfest can be improved upon and can be at the level of a Dark Harbor, not necessarily catering towards the exact same demographic in the same ways, but I do think that it can be that type of event. It does kind of feel like that already, just to a much smaller degree.
Yeah, I get picking up what you're putting down. So
okay,
okay, fascinating. Okay, let's jump into this discussion. So the one fascinating aspect that I find about Shaqtoberfest is that they really build it as a dual event where it was family friendly during the day, scary at night, very much how Fright Fest kind of runs their haunted event, but just a little bit different and unique for the way Shaqtoberfest kind of runs it. How drastic was that shift in the family friendly to the quote scary part of the night? And for the scary atmosphere portion, how scary does it get? Is it Horror Nights Scary Farm level, or is it more kind of silly, scary, fun atmosphere?
Okay, so during the day, which I believe the event usually opens at maybe like 4 p.m. So you get from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. as more of a young child friendly event.
So it looks like on Thursdays it opens up at 6 p.m. Later in October it's 7 p.m. So
okay,
5, 6, and 7.
Okay, so it's not like a full 4 hours, but it's a couple hours. So the event, when you're going for those few hours, there's not a lot of scare actors around, if any. If there are some around, they're the friendlier versions of those characters. Some characters that we saw, actually same actor, but slightly changed their makeup, you know, in between times. They went backstage for 15 minutes and then changed their makeup, a little bit of their costuming, and then came back out.
That's fascinating. I don't think I would have expected the same actor and adjusting their makeup. I would have just assumed like a whole new onslaught of characters.
No, yeah. So we went through 2 of the mazes, which, by the way, the mazes are fairly petite. If you've been to Midsummer Scream, when you get to go through like the Hall of Shadows, and there's usually haunts that are maybe 4 or 5 rooms maximum. They're kind of like that. They're maybe a little bit bigger and themed much better, because they have a bit more time to put them together. But these are not your typical longer mazes. There are a bunch of miniature haunts altogether, but I went through 2 of them before the 8 p.m. witching hour changeover. And what was interesting about, like, for the pirates one, for example, is that you went through the pirate ship, and it was kind of like just being able to tour through a haunt, through a maze when there's no actors in it. But at the end of it, there was, like, you exited the ship, and there was like a little kind of space where there was a mermaid sitting in a clamshell, and she was the one that you went to, and she gave you the candy for the trick or treat.
Oh, that's fun.
And then at night, when the 8 p.m. switchover happened, a lot of the pirates that were kind of wandering around the area beforehand entered the ship, and then they kind of found their places where they jumped out and scared you. And once you got to the end of the ship again, there was that clamshell there, but the makeup that the mermaid was wearing was much more sinister looking, and she was much more evil, trying to scare people. So it was like the same actors, but it was definitely an uptick in feel. But it was not nearly as frightening as HHN or as Scary Farm or as any of the other ones. It did feel like the most friendly of scare actors. It wasn't silly completely, but the scare actors were a bit more easygoing for people.
So would you say that for people who simply just can't handle an HHN or a Fright Fest or a Scary Farm, that Shaqtoberfest might actually be a good introductory or just overall experience for those that are a bit more timid?
You could say that, sure. I think one of the benefits also of the scare actors being a little less like overly frightening is that it actually went back to something that I thought that the Dark Harbor did almost better than anybody else. One of the ideas around Dark Harbor wasn't just that you walk through mazes and then goblins and ghouls jumped out at you and scared you. There were opportunities to go up to these scare actors and have legitimate conversations with them in character.
Yeah.
And you don't really get that in a lot of other places. You might get that a bit at Scary Farm, but you certainly don't get that.
You get most of that at Fright Fest. I wouldn't even say that at Scary Farm at all.
Yeah, I would say Fright Fest, especially in recent years, I think has upped that quite a bit.
Yeah, it's increased quite significantly.
And I would say that it's probably one of their strengths. And I would actually say for this event, for Shaqtoberfest, one of its big strengths is the ability to not befriend a scare actor, but because it's such a smaller space and there are some walk around scare actors that you kind of got to know them, after a few hours and run into them a couple of times, and they would remember people, and they would play off of things that happened previous to you, or if you were actually able to sit down with a couple, you could actually get through a conversation with them in character. It was really cool. I liked that aspect of it. And so it felt like the haunt, like all of the mazes were a good part of the attraction of the entire experience as a whole, but the monsters both inside and outside of those mazes really made it fun. All of those scare actors brought something different to the table, depending on what land they were in, and I really enjoy that aspect more than most things. So I think like during the day you might see like a pirate or a sailor and they'd be able to chat with you and talk with you kind of like a normal person would, but then like at 8 p.m. they would take on this more sinister persona. So you could have a conversation with the same scare actor, twice in the time you visited, and it would be a totally different experience.
I think that's such a fascinating kind of take on it, and almost refreshing, because there really isn't an event where you can do that. Yeah, we mentioned Fright Fest where you could have the conversation with the monsters, but because these scare actors are doing day and night activities, and because the event is relatively small,
Yeah.
you have much more unique interactions with these characters, which inevitably leads to more memories being made, more unique experiences to each person. You know, it's not like everybody's getting the same spiel of, oh, here's this dead guy, he's my friend, say hi, and then he does
Right.
that to like the next group of people. You know, each conversation that this character can have can be tailored to that group of people depending on if they remember you or not, which is a valid situation. But the opportunity of having something like that is something that I've not quite seen at a haunted event.
No, that was the really interesting idea behind this, right? And what's great about the event, and I guess we can talk a little bit about this, is that normally I think when I originally heard this concept that it would be half daytime trick-or-treat street, half, you know, scary, frightening kind of haunted house fest, I thought that there would be two separate tickets, but there's not. Like, you buy a single ticket, you know, if you want to show up on a Thursday at 6 p.m., then you can stay until closing time and get to experience both under the same ticket, which is, I think, really cool.
It's definitely a value because you have the opportunity to entertain the family aspect, and then if the family wants to leave and you want to stay and experience the more frightening side of the event, then you can.
Yeah, and I mean, the way that I see it, I don't think that there's a reason for like a fast pass or whatever, you know, version of that kind of thing. There's no reason to really purchase that, although I don't think that the ticket, you know, for just the fast pass is that expensive. But this experience is, I think, keeping in mind for people, it's $35, which if you're going to Halloween Horror Nights, no matter what coast you go to, whether that's East or West, it's a hefty price. Disney,
like $75, $80, $90.
Yeah, the same with Scary Farm. You're talking, if you're going to Walt Disney World or Disneyland to their Halloween parties, you're talking, you know, over $100, $120 easily. So this is a value experience that I thought actually gave a lot for its value.
And to be fair, we do have to preface all of that with the fact that yes, Fright Fest, Scary Farm, Horror Nights, Disney, Halloween events offer a ton of crap, so they could charge more. So this is a smaller event, so the prices are going to be smaller. But with that being said, everything you're telling me seems that even at a lower price point, even with less things to do than those other competitors, it still feels of value. Like you're not getting ripped off for something that basically has nothing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like for the 4 to 5 hours that I was there, I was constantly doing things. And I didn't do everything as far as like all of the paid things. I didn't ride any of the carnival rides or anything like that.
You don't need to. You can look at them and know what it's like. You're good.
I know what a Ferris wheel feels like, right? Like I know what that is. But for the most part, all of the experiences for the price of the ticket were really great. And especially if you have little kids, there's enough stuff. And if they can get through like the 8 p.m. mark, they're brave enough to do it. So maybe you're talking 10 to 12-year-olds might be able to get past that mark. Or maybe you've got a really brave soul in your family. I don't know what the case might be. But like, if you can get them to stay for 4 or 5 hours, there's enough stuff for sure for like little kids to do in that entire time. And I think that they would have a blast.
So let's break down these tickets really quickly because there are a handful of them. So the first one, the one that you were talking about, that's $35. That's general admission. It's funny, it says best value. It's a one-time general admission access and entry to trick-or-treat trails before 8 p.m. witching hour and or twisted trails after 8 p.m. witching hour. Then there's the general admission for 12 and under. Then there's the fast break, which, by the way, the general admission for 12 and under is $29.99, so $30. So it's about $5 and whatever taxes included less. Fast break, or fast pass, which is a one-time expedited access at entry and at trick-or-treat trails before 8 p.m. witching hour and or twisted trails after 8 p.m. witching hour. Preferred seating at Boat Dock Bar and Tiki Terrace Bar, which runs about $50. And then there's also the Fast Break / Fast Pass for 12 and under as well, which runs $44.99, which is about $45. And then the big ticket item here is the VIP Slam Dunk, which says best experience. You can attend anytime during operating hours. It is recommended that guests arrive at least 90 minutes before the end of the event so they can participate in all attractions. Expedited access at entry and trails. Preferred seating at Boat Dock Bar and Tiki Terrace Bar. Rides, bounce, VIP deck access, plus one Captain Shaq's Hideaway, which I don't know what Captain Shaq's Hideaway is, but I want to know.
Oh, we'll talk about it.
Oh, you know?
Oh, I know.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Anyway, those are the ticket prices. And honestly, those aren't that bad.
They're not. No, and I actually would recommend people don't buy the fast break at all. If you get to the event and there are longer lines, which there possibly could be as we lead into, the Halloween week. But I don't really think you need it. I think that you could save yourself a few bucks, get the general admissions, the VIP like slam dunk thing. If you really want to go all out and you want to get fancy, I believe when you get up on the VIP deck, you're the closest that you'll ever be to the boat. So if you're interested in being as close as possible to the Queen Mary, there's that. And I think you also get one free drink while you're there. So
which, let's be honest, that's like a $18 $20 value usually at these events.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a theme park drink is not cheap.
No, so you can take that off the top of the $100 that you're paying. So that ticket's really $80.
Right, and I don't think that there's a with the Boat Dock Bar or the Tiki Terrace Bar, I don't think that those came with anything. I know the VIP deck did, so I think that there's just one free drink per person, which, I mean, also good. It's a family event. You don't want like somebody puking all over your children.
Grandma.
Yeah, exactly. But for the most part, the expedited access isn't really needed. Like I said, I think general admission for the most part for a majority of people is going to be fantastic.
So what is Captain Shaq's Hideaway? Because it says plus one Captain Shaq's Hideaway, which makes it seem like it's an item, but it sounds more like like a place to enter.
So it is, I guess that is a second drink. So you do get a drink. So, okay, so
it's another $20 off the top. It's only $60.
Yeah. So, okay, remember Dark Harbor and how you would be walking through a maze and then all of a sudden there'd be a bar?
Hidden bars.
Yeah. So this one isn't necessarily overly hidden. You definitely know it's there when you're walking past it, but it is a bar within a maze. And if you either have the VIP Slam Dunk access or you purchase a drink kind of near the front gate for that bar, then you're able to take like a wristband in and show them,
gotcha.
And then you can get a drink while you're there, which is a specific drink. It's specific to that bar, so there's a bunch of different rum drinks specific to the pirate bar, Captain Jack's Hideaway. Yeah,
I like when events have specific drinks that you can only get in certain areas. Like I get it when people get mad, like I just want a margarita and they should have a margarita everywhere. But if there are signature cocktails that are specific to the area, depending on whatever maze you're in or whatever bar you're in and part of the event, I like that kind of stuff. So if this is a very unique cocktail for a very unique experience, I like that kind of stuff. It makes it feel a lot more unique and special.
Yeah, and there's 3 bars. So there's Captain Shaq's Hideaway, but the other 2 bars are just outside, and they're just regular bars, but they're themed. So you have the Boat Dock Bar, which is kind of themed to this like Newport Beachy type of look, as far as like the kind of ship in the background and like all of the rope, like big thick rope everywhere. And the Tiki Terrace Bar is kind of just what it is. It's a kind of generic looking tiki bar. But again, there are spaces that serve specific cocktails. So if you wanted the margarita, you'd go to the Dock Bar. But if you wanted a Mai Tai, you would go over to the Tiki Terrace Bar.
Oh, you'd find me at Tiki Terrace in a heartbeat, man. That's where I'd be going.
Well, then I would meet you over there, I guess.
So that's cool. I mean, I like the fact that there's a uniqueness to the experience in that sense. So, it sounds like the VIP Slam Dunk sounds like a lot of fun for me personally. I think that would be something that I would probably end up buying just because I want access to the ship, one. I want the specialty cocktails, too. And I just like the more VIP treatment of those style of tickets because it just makes for a really fun night out, especially when I'm probably with Nikki getting away from the kid and we have a babysitter. Why not go all out if we're not going out often? So for us, that makes for a little bit of a special outing. But let's jump into some of the bigger attractions and sections of Shaqtoberfest. Now, I believe there are 6 different areas of Shaqtoberfest, and we'll jump to each one and talk about it and kind of what it encompasses. So the first one is Midway Madness. Midway Madness is a festive street carnival complete with a clown-infested funhouse filled with rides, games, and a variety of food. The carnival offers trick-or-treating during the day and adult experience after 8 p.m. Ooh, adult experience. What are we talking about here?
Not anything crazy. Put your Viagra away.
Lame.
Yeah,
Lame.
no. So the Midway Madness maze, there are 4 mazes in all of this, and kind of, as we get to each section, we'll talk about those. But the Midway Madness maze was probably the weakest out of all of them.
Man.
There were good chunks of it that were so wide open to the point where it was kind of made up to look like Midway Games, hence the name. But as you walked through it, you were like in the area where if you were running the game, that's where you'd be. So you were just looking back out at the event in certain parts of this maze.
Oh, weird.
And
weird.
So
that's kind of lame.
Yeah, it was kind of less a maze and more of like a condensed scare zone that was like somewhat inside.
It's like a gauntlet style situation.
Sure. And again, because a lot of the scare actors kind of come into the mazes and out of the mazes as much as possible. And that's another thing. I think that for the amount of scare actors that this entire event had, it could probably use some more. But it also felt like they were trying to do everything as DIY as possible. So I am rooting for them. But when we were in the maze, we probably only saw 3 or 4 scare actors. Meanwhile, as soon as we exited the maze, there were 4 or 5 just kind of in the vicinity outside of the maze. So they might do better in choreographing how many people are inside and how many people are outside.
Yeah.
Because it just, it kind of felt like, oh, I'm walking through this thing, but it's not necessarily a maze. It's just like an indoor space to see.
Yeah, I kind of picking up what you're putting down. That's unfortunate.
It is, but I think it might have just been the time that I went through it. But I would say still, there are 4 mazes, and this one was the worst. But the other 3 had really great redeeming value to it. And I would say in general,
it made up for it. It made up for it.
Yeah, it made up for it. I would say the Midway area in general kind of felt just like your normal carnival coming through town that pitches up a bunch of different rides like in a mall parking lot.
I mean, it sounds generic, and I don't think that was necessarily being tried to they weren't trying to avoid that. They were leading into it. But I think that the thing that made kind of the same type of experience so special at Dark Harbor, and I don't want to compare them. You're about to.
but the Dark Harbor and other types of Carney-esque setups in other theme parks, just in general, as a broad scope, they add their own twist to things. And this never felt like it added a twist. It felt like they were able to rent some carnival rides and set up shop. The only thing that was like specifically special in this area is this like really big inflatable dinosaur reptile thing It
Is
was
that
like
the
a
one where you could go through the middle of it?
it was like a giant bearded dragon. Yeah, it felt like you were just like making your way through its intestines. Like if this was a school field trip, a teacher would be telling you what area of the journey you're on.
Now you're coming out of its butt.
Yeah, from mouth to hole.
From hole to hole.
But like it's all inflatable. So
Yeah, of course.
it's not like gross or like there's no slime or anything.
So it's not like Ace Ventura coming out of the rhinoceros?
No, not at all. And
That's unfortunate.
There were no scare actors in this. I think it was mostly set up to be the most kid-friendly area after dark. And it was still fun to walk through, but like, you know, it is something still like felt like I could probably get at any local carnival.
Gotcha. The next one up is Diesel's Pumpkin Patch. During the day, Shaq Diesel's Pumpkin Patch offers a traditional experience where kids of all ages can explore the attraction by stopping at one of the many trick-or-treat stations, pumpkin sculptures, or inflatable play zones. At night, the attraction erupts to life as a Shaq Diesel mix blasts throughout the area, accompanied by an over-the-top light show, mixing Halloween and EDM into a walkthrough experience. Is this the area that had that almost looked like a house that had like Laker colors on it and like an image of Shaq holding like a pumpkin he was going to shoot a free throw?
No.
Okay, that might have just been in the artwork for the event.
Yeah, so there is a block party where there is like a house. The backdrop of like the stage is the garage. So you see the garage door, and then
that's what I'm talking about.
And then you get to see like the hoop, you know, up top. No, but the pumpkin patch is probably the largest area. It's the place where you'll probably spend the most time. Okay. So I only went during the night, but I can just assume take all of the scare actors away, and it's the exact same during the day.
You're probably not wrong.
But it is a mix of hedge mazes that you're wandering through. Some really great setups of a mix of corn stalks and scarecrows and like jack-o'-lanterns all throughout this area. I thought initially when I heard pumpkin patch that I was actually going to be going and picking out a pumpkin and carving it, but that is not the case here at all. Okay. There is a big giant inflatable bouncy thing. It's not a castle, so I don't want to call it a bouncy castle, but it's shaped like a pumpkin. And you can, you know, run from end to end on it. They just like ask you to take off your shoes and you just run around on that. There's also two big inflatable obstacle courses. So if you want to like race a friend on that, you can race a friend there. I actually had a friend with me and we ended up, you know, making a race through one of them, which was fun. I could actually fit. So, you know, if you're, I'm not a skinny person, so
neither am I.
You could definitely make your way through it. And then at the very end was a big giant inflatable slide that was probably like 25 feet tall. It was probably like the biggest like inflatable slide I'd ever seen. And so of course I had to go on that. And so, you know, you climb up to the top and slide down, and that was a lot of fun.
When in Rome.
And again, because there's not a ton of people at this particular event, you could probably jump up and down on all these different, you know, inflatable things for a long time, like especially if you have little kids. And then you went through like a bunch of different areas during the nighttime that were not only just the hedge mazes, but also there was a building called the Pumpkin Shack, but with a Q instead of a CK.
SHAQ, people.
Exactly.
Lots of puns here.
Tons of puns. And it was fun because you got to kind of like walk through this little like chicken coop while like scare actors jumped out at you. And some of the scare actors were a little bit angrier and scarier, and some of them were scarecrows that just loved to dance to EDM. So it was like a great mix. It was a great mix of like scares and just being so absurd that like you can't not love it.
Yeah, it just sounds like it's striking the right tone is what it's doing.
Right.
It's very self-aware. Like, we understand that this is ridiculous. We're trying to scare you, but we get why how ridiculous this is.
Yes, exactly.
Now, you said hedge maze, so please tell me you made a Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors reference while you were there.
I did not. No, I didn't take a chainsaw to the hedge.
Found a shortcut through your hedge maze.
funny and yeah. You got the shinin.
Don't you mean shining?
No,
Quiet,
funny enough,
you want to get sued?
I'm actually currently working on a video right now that is about that exact Treehouse of Horrors episode.
That's probably my favorite Treehouse of Horrors episode.
It's a lot of people's, and it has a lot of like history and stuff. I'm not gonna like spoil the video or out, but I'm gonna have like a 20-minute video on an episode of The Simpsons that's like 23 minutes long.
I'm so game for that. I would have to say that when Homer goes urge to kill rising is something that I quote quite often, like probably on a weekly basis. So I'm game. I'm game.
Yeah. Well, there were no urges to kill in this maze or anything like that. There was just a lot of like EDM dancing.
Urge to dance to EDM rising.
Exactly. And a lot of like inflatable things to jump on, which I am not in shape is what I learned.
So you bounced around and you found yourself out of breath very quickly.
Yeah. Also, like, it's really difficult to just like jump as a adult grown man in a bouncy castle, because I don't know if you know this, but like,
easy to jump in. They're not.
Air doesn't hold up a grown man.
It does not. It does not. And I'm aware of this as well. But
Yeah.
I do have to say, just like even if you were just trying to walk around, you have to do that weird like high steppy bounce walk thing just to kind of walk in these things. And
Yeah, exactly.
that's tiring. That's tiring. So I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Thanks.
So moving on to the next one. Lost City Boardwalk. Located underneath the gangways alongside the Queen Mary, guests can explore the area where time and its inhabitants have been stuck in the 1920s. During the day, guests can trick-or-treat amongst the larger-than-life characters or grab a frozen treat at the waterfront ice cream shack, once again spelled S-H-A-Q. But be warned when the sun sets on Lost City Boardwalk. Gnarly characters emerge from the seedy underbelly of the boardwalk. Now, when it says larger-than-life characters, what do they mean?
I think what they're trying to imply is that they are caricatures of movie characters, or like very themed characters. This whole thing is very themed. I feel like the 17th Door people, which put on this event, went to Shaquille O'Neal and were like, Shaq.
Door.
Or no, it wasn't 17th Door. Sorry.
13th floor.
13th floor, yeah. Sorry. And that's a very different situation.
Yeah, very, very different.
But they went to Shaq and were like, hey, what kind of things do you like? And he just said a bunch of random stuff. And they tried to make it all work. So this whole area is kind of built to be like a Bonnie and Clyde, Dick Tracy-esque, gangster hideout.
That's so random compared to everything else. Like, I get Pirates Cove, get Dead Man's Wharf, get Shipwreck. That'll make sense. Even to the extent of like understanding like carnivals, because carnivals are on boardwalks a lot of the time. Pumpkin Patch because it's Halloween, but then gangsters.
Yeah, gangsters. So walking through this area, which is also pretty open comparatively to everything else. Yeah. So in kind of the same way as like the Midway Madness is a bit more open. But this one was really interestingly themed in the sense that it was a lot of stage sets. So a lot of kind of flat backgrounds. But there were some interesting, cool props as well. So like they had a cool old like 1930s, getaway car.
That's fun.
Yeah, it was kind of like a cool cruiser, and then, a couple of other like set pieces, but for the most part, a lot of stuff was kind of like these flat backdrops. It definitely had more of a and this is going to sound really bad, and I don't mean it this way, but it had a real kind of high school theater go get 'em vibe.
Yeah, that definitely sounds bad.
Yeah, it sounds bad, but it was again, I think just being there, there's like a kitschiness to it that I can't describe. Like you just kind of have to go. Like if you were to see a video of this, you'd be like, wow, this is really lame looking. But once you're in it, you just kind of like give up and have fun with it.
Yeah.
And I was just having a ton of fun with it. The actors that were in there were all dressed in their like zoot suits, or you have to walk through like a prison. So there's like a couple of, guys dressed in their like old school prison uniforms. You had to like walk through a bank where there were like these giant gold, like Scrooge McDuck looking bars. It was again, the entire event is so absurd, but it understands that it's absurd and leans into it in the ways that like the best kind of B movies lean into things. And so that's what you feel like when you walk through Lost City Boardwalk.
Like, I feel like it would be really different if they took themselves so seriously.
Yeah.
And then they have these ridiculous aspects and it ruins everything. If you're in on the joke, if they're in on the joke that it's ridiculous, then it all works very well together.
Yes. And I think that that's the difference between like this. If you're going to really compare them, the difference between this and the Dark Harbor. The Dark Harbor was a little bit more sinister. There were some fun elements, but for the most part, the way it was set up was taking itself seriously.
Yeah.
It was a serious film with elements of humor. This is a humorous event with elements of seriousness.
Huh. And I don't mind that. I don't mind the switch around. I don't need to have top level scary every single event that I go to. I like having a variety of tones at my events because I think that's what makes good events on the whole in general. You can't have scary 24/7. So if you're going to have an event that's mostly kind of over the top ridiculous mixed with some scary atmosphere, I think it's probably going to succeed.
Right. And I didn't touch on this because it's kind of not in the Midway area. It's like on the edge of the Midway area leading into the Dead Man's Wharf area. But there, along that walkway, there is a game there in the same respect of like, when you go to like an arcade and there's that like basketball game where they give you a couple of like balls to throw into the hoop and you try and score as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So they have that kind of setup here, but instead of basketballs, they give you just like mannequin heads that they've dressed up to look like just human heads.
That's funny.
And you get to throw those in. It's like it understands how crazy and silly it is. And it's just funny and cheeky, but like, yeah, that's the best way I could sum it up is they give you fake human heads to throw into basketball hoops because it's an event centered around a man known for playing basketball. But also being a person who was, the creator of Shaq Fu.
yeah, exactly. Honestly, like, it doesn't sound real as somebody who hasn't gone to the event.
It's a fever dream.
No, it feels like something like, and this, I mean this in the most highest regards because I love this movie so much. Freaking Scooby-Doo when they go to Spooky Island and all the random crap that's like around the island, like the claw machines with the baby heads in it and stuff. Like something that would be made up for a movie where you would see it at like a scary event. Ooh, free throw shooting with severed heads. That's what it sounds like, but that. For real. But for real.
Yeah.
I'm so...
You got it.
I love that. I love it. So since you brought up Dead Man's Wharf, let's actually jump into that one next. And it's the little summary here. It says, from nautical-filled fisheries to eerie bait shops, guests navigate past the reaching tentacles of large sea creatures who have made their way ashore. The local lighthouse keeper and fishermen guard the boathouse to keep young ones safe from any critters with a delicious piece of candy to celebrate Halloween. After the witching hour, however, all bets are off.
Yeah, this area as well as the shipwreck graveyard kind of bleed into each other. You'd be surprised how similar they are, while also
the images
maintaining
look
some of their
exactly
own.
the same.
The images look exactly the same, but like if you were to notice, you would know kind of which one is which.
Well, one's blue and one's red, so that's how I know.
I mean, there's a couple more differences than that.
Well, this is just from the perspective of somebody who's not gone. I'm literally just looking at the website. So it literally looks like Shipwreck Graveyard. They shot down one hallway with blue light, did a 180, turned around and shot down the rest of the hallway the opposite direction and had a red light. That's what it looks like.
But the Dead Man Wharf area, it contains the bar, the boat dock bar, but it also contains the Dead Man's Wharf maze. And this maze has some really cool looking stuff. It reminds me of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, like the movie. I said this to a couple people while I was there, was that there's a need for a genre film that I feel like is kind of like aquatic sci-fi, aquatic horror. Like we never hardly go that route unless it's like a shark movie. But like to set up something where it's like a kraken or some kind of like in the future sci-fi Atlantis scary type of thing, like those types of things don't exist, and that's what this is shooting for. And it was really cool to see like, you know, these diver helmets that had like skeleton heads in them, and this big giant tentacled monster that seems to be like eating up the maze.
That sounds pretty dang cool.
Yeah, and like there was some really big kind of animatronic. What was interesting is like, again, this event is just absurd, and it knows it is, and there are giant animatronic things in this whole area.
What are the things?
So there was like a big giant monster that comes to life within this maze, and then at the end of the maze there is a big giant fish that comes to life. And funny enough, I was in this maze when the 8 o'clock witching hour happens. So during the daytime, the fish is not moving or anything. It's not even like lit really. It's just there.
It's like a static figure. You're not supposed to pay attention to it. It's just kind of off there to the side.
Yeah, it is like a it's an angler fish, right? So it's got like a big like light in front of it. And so like the light was on, but like it's the daytime, and like the hallway that you're kind of walking through is like fun colored.
Yeah.
And then I was surprised when it got dark and they turned on like some of the other lighting effects that were in there. All of like the fun, vibrant colors went away. And it was like they stopped lighting the actual like kind of maze portion of it, and instead did like that underwater effect where they shoot like green lasers out.
Yeah.
Right? So you're kind of like wading in the water.
Like a swamp.
Yeah, like kind of that swamp effect. And then you walk up to this anglerfish, and it just is loud and rapidly moving, and you're dangerously close to it. So that all came on at the exact same time as I was walking by it, and it freaked me out.
It's probably startling a little bit.
It was a bit startling, but it was a really cool effect. So like this maze, it wasn't the longest. The pumpkin patch was definitely the longest, but I would say that this maze was probably the best in terms of nailing its theme. This one and Pirates Cove. But yeah, this was fun. I would probably, if I were to go again, I would walk through 3 or 4 times.
You're making me real sad that we didn't go.
You should go. Hey man, it's $35.
I know, right? We should go. It's super cheap. So you said that Shipwreck Graveyard kind of bleeds into this one a bit. So let's talk about that one. Rusted vessels and withering cargo, shrouded in fog and whispering echoes, lie between the boardwalk and the nearby fishing village, surrounded by dangerous seafaring undead surfacing for their watery graves. This area is a family-friendly trick-or-treat spot during the day and an eerie gauntlet after 8 p.m. That sounds eerily similar to something from Dark Harbor.
Yeah, it definitely felt like this area because, like, kind of like you were saying, in a way, like to your left is one and to the right is the other one, and they kind of bleed into each other, so they all look like one big area. But like the Dead Man's Wharf / Shipwreck Graveyard area felt the most like a Dark Harbor spot. And what was interesting is
traditional haunted event style thing.
Yeah, and especially for the Queen Mary in particular. And interestingly enough, so if you were to walk in through the main gate, which you have to walk under Shaquille O'Neal's giant head to get into
amazing,
the
by
front
the
gate.
way.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So because I was like part of the media, didn't go under Shaq's head. So I did not know this, but later went through and kind of did the normal thing. So I went under Shaq's head and then walked up through, if anybody's ever familiar with the Queen Mary, they kind of have like a little European kind of German Swiss village area that's there all the time, that I think they use either for events like this or people can rent them out. But they used that area for the Shipwreck Graveyard and Dead Man's Wharf.
Nice.
And so it felt like really full because they were already using some stuff that was already there. But then they added in all these like big animatronic pieces. There was like a moving animatronic horse skeleton. And then all of the like kind of shipwreck survivors were all these people that had like, their big like safety neck. I forget what it's called, like the neck raft thing. Life
the
preserver.
inflatable life preservers.
They had like those on them, and like had like the big blacked out like mascara makeup to make them look dead and whatnot. And so I actually got to talking with a bunch of them to talk about like how they died, and a bunch of them like made up their backstories. There was a sailor that was a part of the ship, and he was one of the first people to go down because he went down with the crew, and he was there protecting people, and like he and the fishermen from like the wharf area kind of like commiserated back and forth, and they were like both kind of protecting this larger area together. It was cool in that regard that it felt like everybody kind of had a story that they were playing off of, and if you got involved with it, you could be a part of their story.
That's cool. I enjoy that.
Yeah.
So I feel like Nikki would hate that, though. Nikki doesn't like interacting with characters. I do.
Yeah, this was the most, I would say that like of everything this year, this is the most interaction with characters that I'd had. And to me, that it's great because that is the legacy that I loved the most from Dark Harbor that has carried over into this event.
At least there's that.
Yes.
That's cool. No, I like that. I'm always a big proponent of events allowing actors to maintain a certain level of ownership over their characters and allowing them to kind of come up with backstories, because inevitably those backstories those guys are going to think of that are going to be intertwined with every other actor is probably going to be better than something someone's going to think up of that's not involved in the night-to-night situations between monsters and guests.
And I think that can continue to be improved upon, not just year to year, but like night to night. These people can continue to build these backstories, and then if Shaqtoberfest has a lineage, several years out, and these people come back, it might be cool to like continually see these same faces and re-meet them and do the same kind of thing that you do at some of these other haunts that have been around for years and years.
Exactly. Moving on to the last bit of Shaqtoberfest, we have Pirates Cove. On the hunt for buried treasure, pirates have invaded the local shore and cave searching for riches. Greeted by Blackbeard Bart, guests make their way through dark alleys and caves of a waterfront village overtaken by pirates. Located within the area is a secret pirate lair, Captain Shaq's hideaway, which we mentioned before, where guests can grab a shot of rum punch, toast a pirate's life, and fire a cannon. Can you really fire a cannon?
I did not fire a cannon, so I don't know, but I did
Lame.
hear this. I did hear the sound of like a cannon.
Okay, maybe
So
lame. I don't know.
I wonder if people could like shoot, something that made the sound. But there was no like cannons going off. There were no Nerf balls jumping into the sky or anything.
Oh man, if they had like a straight like American Gladiator section, I would have been game.
I know.
Let's do this.
I was wanted to be on American Gladiators.
Dude, didn't we all, man? Didn't we all?
I actually earlier today was actually talking about fighting somebody with those giant Q-tips. So it's a dream. Okay, Pirates Cove is more or less just a maze. So like where Dead Man's Wharf is both a like zone, like themed area and a maze, and like Shipwreck Graveyard is just a themed area. It has no maze. Pirates Cove is just a maze. You jump aboard this ship that's kind of crash landed, and you walk through the inside of it, come out the other side, and you are met with a mermaid, a fantastical mermaid or siren or whatever you want to call it on the other side.
Yeah, okay, that was the one that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so she goes from giving you candy to an hour later, trying to scare the pants off of you.
For some people, that might happen.
This is a really well-themed little ship. They did a really great job in the set design of it. The problem is that it's so small, and because it's just the maze and it's not a larger themed area, it feels like it needs something else. In this, like, when you first enter, right, you go through Shaq's head, and then you get to see the Shipwreck Graveyard and the Dead Man's Wharf, and they're super hugely themed areas with all these characters and everything. And then you kind of turn that corner and you get to Pirates Cove, and there's just the ship there. I just wish that there was more to it. There were definitely scare actors both inside and out of it, but it would have been nice to have set up like, this kind of Tortuga little small, like expand upon the village that they're clearly using in the background.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, they don't really do it justice either here on this page, because didn't know, everybody. I'm looking at the website right now, reading all the information. Literally, for this one, they just show alcohol.
Yeah,
which to me infers that there's a lot more to do when there isn't. Which I'm assuming this is just a picture of people admiring liquor in Captain Shaq's hideaway.
It does kind of feel like that. Like there should be more, but there's not. In fact, actually, like going to the page that you're looking at on the website, outside of the Midway Madness photo and maybe the pumpkin patch, everything else kind of feels like stuff they pulled out of nowhere. In fact, I would actually say the Shipwreck Graveyard and the Dead Man's Wharf photos they use on the website are actually in the Pirates Cove ship. So they are
interesting.
They are not even representative of those areas. So, like those three photos are all within the ship.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, I think that they are doing themselves a disservice, because I think that the graveyard and the wharf are the two best areas that they have. And the ship is great, but it is definitely more or less a hidden bar that has a couple of scare actors within it.
Huh. Fascinating. Yeah, that's unfortunate that they're doing that. I mean, I feel like that's not really giving people the right idea of what these actually are and what they encompass.
Right. The other kind of area is the block party, which is where all of like the food stalls are.
Which isn't listed on the attractions, by the way. Like it's on the map, but it's not an official attraction.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't call it, you'd more or less call it a shopping area, but it does have a stage and like a DJ, and if you're into that kind of thing, like just to hang out and sit down and listen to music while you eat is a cool experience. And they did have like a little shop that had some really basic merchandise, mostly the logo on like black t-shirts. They did have some cool like Hawaiian shirts, but they weren't themed to Shaq or Shaqtoberfest. They were just
generic,
like, generic Halloween kind of Hawaiian shirts.
I would have been game for that.
Yeah, I thought that those were great looking shirts, but I think that hopefully as the event expands, I would love to see some really cool, Shaq stuff. Like, it would have been cool to have purchased a Lakers looking jersey, but with the Shaqtoberfest logo on the front of it.
Dude, you're getting me excited for things that don't exist.
I know. I thought of this. They should have hired me.
I would have even taken a shirt with a picture of Shaq in the heyday shooting a free throw, but in his hands is a pumpkin or a severed head or something.
Yeah,
I would have even taken that.
Well, I'm sorry, they don't have any of that.
Or a stuffed animal plush of Shaq dressed as the logo, where he has skeleton hands and a pumpkin in one of them. I would have taken that too.
There's none of that either, so I'm sorry.
I don't know if the market for Shaq plushies is too big or not. So, I mean, I understand to an extent why they're not doing that. So, but overall, I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of fun here, and this is by far not the typical event. I wouldn't even say that this is a haunt. I would definitely say that their description of this is apt, and that is Shaqtoberfest, a Halloween festival. It isn't a haunt in the traditional sense of like massive scare zones, lots of haunted houses. You go here to get scared. This is a place to celebrate the Halloween season,
and it has
a
little
choice
bit
to get scared.
It has a little bit of everything.
Yeah, you have the family friendly aspect as well as the opportunity to get scared if you're into that sort of thing. So it feels like they're really trying hard to please a large group of people, and it sounds like they're successful at it.
Yeah, and I would say like the bare minimum you could do is at night, like maybe 9 or 10. Like, I wouldn't say this is like a family friendly event for like 4-year-olds. Like,
not at all.
But yeah, like the 9, 10, like leaning into kind of those tween years, I think this is a perfect event for that crowd and their families. And like, even as adults, like, man, you could go have a couple of drinks and have a blast chatting with characters, jumping around on, some inflatable pumpkins, listening to some music, eating some good food. Like, you could have a good time here. And even though you're paying maybe a little bit more than the price of admission because you're buying a few other things, it's still cheaper than going to any of the other major, haunt experiences in the Los Angeles area or Orlando or like probably most places. This is a really great value for what you're getting comparatively to like most other things. Like, I remember, living in other places that didn't do a lot of haunted house stuff. You would go to a place where you would literally walk through one maze and that was the entire experience, but you'd be paying $25-$30 for just that one maze.
Yeah.
This is for $35 for an adult, multi-hour event.
So you get your money's worth very easily.
I believe you do.
Well, it's good to hear. And I mean, like, I'm kind of bummed that we didn't get to visit it. So we might end up wanting to visit before the end of the season, because that's rapidly approaching, as it does every year. So, but thank you so much for covering this event for us and coming here on the show to talk to us in detail about what Shaqtoberfest has to offer, where maybe the shortcomings are, where its strengths lie, and how people can have fun.
Yeah, it was a great time. I recommend it, and hopefully you get to go, my friend.
I'm crossing my fingers, man. The calendar is rather booked and filled, but we'll see what I can manage between now and Halloween. So we'll see what happens. But thank you for joining me on this week's episode, and let everybody know where they can follow you and take a glimpse at all the awesome content that you create.
Sure. My main thing that I'm doing these days are long form videos on YouTube. By long form, I mean 15, 20-minute videos, mostly about film and animation and the Disney company. My logo is like an umbrella with the castle on top of it because it's It's covering everything under the Disney umbrella. And then some. But I do mostly like film and television stuff there. And if you want to follow me on social media, either on TikTok or Twitter or Instagram, those are the three main places I use at this point. I am at Modern Mouse Josh on all of them. And the YouTube channel is Modern Mouse.
Definitely go check out his stuff. It's absolutely fantastic. I vouch for the content because I consume it myself. So definitely go check out Josh. But this leads us to the end of this week's episode, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to this awesome episode revolving all around Shaqtoberfest. And hopefully you guys make it on out to that event and have a good time shooting free throws with severed heads and all the nonsense that they have to offer there. Now, you guys, if you haven't already, make sure that you support the show. We have free ways of supporting the show, and that's leaving a 5-star written review on iTunes. It's a free way to support us, as I said, and it raises us up higher in the standings, and it makes it easier for everyone to find us and enjoy us like you are right now. And if you want to follow us on social media, you can follow us at Theme Park Duo on almost all platforms. The only one is TikTok, because someone took it for some reason, and you can find us at The Theme Park Duo, so you're just adding a the at the top of it, so it's not that confusing. If you want to support the show in a different way, you can always check out our TeePublic site where we have fun Theme Park Duo t-shirts and other nonsensical items you can purchase. You can check out the show sponsor, DRNXMYTH, if you like freshly made cocktails delivered directly to your door. And you can always email us about anything under the sun that you want to contact us about. Things you love, things you don't like, things you want to hear on the show. You want Nikki back on, you're tired of hearing my voice and having other people on the show, you can always email us at themeparkduo@gmail.com. Thank you again, everybody, for enjoying this week's episode. And always remember, there's always a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. See ya!
Thanks for riding with the Theme Park Duo. Make sure to gather all your belongings before the end of the podcast. Bye-bye.